Welcome to What Are They Thinking, a podcast by the Herbert Institute at Utah Valley University, where civic engagement comes to life.
Dr. Carson, it is such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Well,
and
thank you.
on behalf of the Herbert Institute for Public Policy, welcome to UVU.
I love the state of Utah because it has one of my favorite places, Zion National Park.
Oh my goodness. I love Zion National Park. It's amazing. I love to go there. Thank you again for joining us for our podcast today. And we'd just like to ask you a couple questions and get to know you. And part of the mission of the Herbert Institute is to increase trust in civic institutions. And we do that by connecting students with policy leaders and thought leaders for the nation and the state.
Sounds like a good idea.
Thank you. Many of our students are still experiencing grief from the Charlie Kirk assassination on campus. And one of those stages of grief is anger. Can you share an experience in your life where you've had to move from anger to acceptance and what helped you along the process?
Yes, I used to be an extremely angry person. I wasn't angry most of the time, but I would just fly off the handle and try to hurt people. I remember one time a fella hit me with a pebble. It didn't hurt, but I was incensed that he would dare hit me, and I threw a big rock at his face, broke his glasses, and almost put his eye out. And that should have taught me, but it didn't. And I got into a lot of trouble. One time, I hit another student in the head with a baseball bat because I was mad at him. And, I sort of took off from school that afternoon because I knew I was in big trouble. And I went home, and I was searching through the garage desperately for something with my older brother. He's 2 years older than me. He says, "What are you looking for so desperately?" And I said, "I'm looking for the rat poison." He says, "What do you need that for?" I said, "I need to kill myself." He says, "There's a much better way to do it than that." He said, "Just drink water until you burst." So, I was in the third grade. I said, "That sounds pretty good." I kept drinking. And by the time I got through peeing, I didn't want to kill myself anymore, which I think was his plan all along. But, I did begin to see how it got me in a lot of trouble, and it was really when I was 14 years old. And someone made me angry, and I had a large camping knife, and I tried to stab him with it. And fortunately, it hit a large metal belt buckle under his clothing and broke. But that whole experience taught me that the end result of uncontrolled anger in just one moment can totally ruin your life. And that's what I try to get people to understand. Unfortunately, in life, there are going to be those moments. There are going to be a lot of things that bring strife and grief into your life. And some of those things bring resentment and anger with them. You have to make a choice. Are you going to let that anger control you, or are you going to control that anger? And that's basically what we have to do now in this country, because there are factions that wish to fundamentally change our country into something else. And we cannot be conquered militarily, but we can be destroyed internally. A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love your point about choosing, and that grief is a process, and feeling anger, it's a process, but continuing to choose a healthy outlet, continuing to choose better every single day can help us move forward and move past to a place of acceptance.
And it makes your life a lot better. If you're a person who gets angry easily, just think about how much control you have. You don't have to be made angry. There are certain politicians, for instance, I'm not mentioning any names, who all you have to do is push one little button and there they go. But a lot of times they learn from things that happen. It makes a big difference.
True. It's a process. Life is a journey. Life is a continuing process. And You know, that actually leads perfectly to my next question, which is about character. And you often speak of having about the importance of character. And which characteristics would you value most in a public servant?
Well, for a public servant, you want somebody who's honest. And one of the ways you can gauge honesty is, are they willing to admit being wrong? You'll see some politicians who can never admit to being wrong about anything. Run for the hills. Those are not your people. But someone who's introspective and can take something and look at it and say, yes, I can see how that could perhaps have been better, and is able to consider other points of view, as opposed to just thinking that they are correct, they are the ultimate authority and everything. Those are exactly the people that you don't want to represent you.
Character isn't something that we speak of often these days, and honesty is such a foundational aspect of character. And it's taught, and it's also needs to be practiced each day, and to continue on to live a fulfilling life and to serve those around us.
And one of the ways you can tell if people have good character is how they treat their family and how they treat the people around them. If you see an official who has a rapid change of staff turnover all the time and nobody wants to be around them for very long, there's a reason for that. And you have somebody, on the other hand, everybody around them loves them and wants to make sure that they're successful. That's your person.
Character is so hard to describe, and you just did it beautifully. To recognize the good characters in our public servants and in our own lives, to follow their example.
Absolutely.
What are your top 3 concerns for America today? And what would you tell young people looking to resolve these challenges?
Well, I'm concerned about hatred and divisiveness. I'm concerned about our lack of faith. And I'm concerned about our standing in the world. I'll start with the last one first. Before America came along, remember what the world was like? You wouldn't remember because you're not that old, but from your reading of history, this country conquering this one and destroying its people and taking all the goods and plundering. And, the United States made a big difference in that. And I'm concerned that if we relinquish that role in the world, what will happen to the world? Because evil still exists. And I see us as sort of a barrier to the spreading of evil. And that's not to say that there isn't plenty of evil here too. But there's never been a country quite like ours that is the mightiest country that doesn't go and plunder everybody else and tries to look out for the rights of others. And, as far as the hatred and division that exists in this country, we are in a war with China. AI and a whole host of other things. They want to be the dominant power in the world. The only thing that will prevent that from happening is a very strong, united States of America. If we spend all of our time fighting each other, demonizing each other, trying to destroy each other, we will be easy pickings. And somehow we've got to get people to understand that we are being manipulated. And all you have to do is go and look at something like the book called The Naked Communist. W. Cleon Skousen, he was an FBI agent, spent his entire career looking at what communists were trying to do in this country. And he had 45 goals of communism. And you can see exactly what they were doing by trying to divide us on the basis of race, age, income, gender, religion, political affiliation, you name it. Divide them, keep them fighting each other, and that weakens them tremendously. You can also see how manipulation of the population is such a powerful force if you read the book Rules for Radicals. And it tells you step by step what to do to gain control of the minds of the people. And that's been going on in this country for quite some time. And we have got to somehow get our people to understand that we have choices. We don't have to go down that road. We've seen plenty of examples of good. Our founding document is very inspirational. It talks about our Creator and how He gave us certain rights and He protects those rights. And, you know, we can choose that pathway, or we can choose the pathway of hatred and destruction. But our Judeo-Christian values say love your neighbor. Not hate your neighbor if they disagree with you, not try to cancel your neighbor, but love your neighbor. And ultimately, that will be what determines what kind of country we are going to be. And it made a difference. Now, a lot of people say, but you can't really say that the United States is a good place and it's a moral place because they had slavery. But yes, they did have slavery, and yes, it was evil, but so did virtually every other society that ever existed. And so slavery didn't make America particularly evil. It didn't make us unique. What did make us unique is that we had so many people who were opposed to it that we fought a bloody civil war, lost a large portion of our population to get rid of it. And, you know, there doesn't seem to be a lot of talk about all the people who were opposed to it, about the establishment of the Underground Railroad, where lots of people, black people, white people, risked everything, including their lives, to provide a pathway for freedom for people. You don't hear very much about it. And that's intentional because people want to continue to push the false narrative that we are morally decadent, more so than anybody else. And that simply is not the case. And we also need not to be afraid. You know, our freedom of speech is at risk. It's really kind of started with political correctness. And it morphed into wokeness. And now you have a situation where people are always saying, can I say that? Of course you can say it. If you can speak, you can talk. And, you know, we really need to put that stuff back in the box and encourage people.
Thank you. You spoke a little bit about being a United States again. So in closing, what advice would you give to a UVU student to make a difference in our community?
I would say encourage dialogue, encourage people to talk, because the fact of the matter is you can take the most radical left-wing person and the most radical right-wing person, and they probably agree on 80% of stuff. Let's start with that 80% you agree on. And just add in the parts you disagree on after you've established a working relationship and work on it together. If you're intellectually honest, you should be able to come to a solution.
Thank you.
Okay.
And it's true, start with the relationship, build on the things that are in common, and that will change the world, and I really do believe that. And thank you for sharing your message with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.